Good morning. I call the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Readiness to order. I want to welcome you to this morning's hearing and would like to thank our witnesses for being here today to discuss the Defense Organic Industrial Base and the significant role it has in maintaining and restoring readiness back to our armed services. This hearing will specifically focus on the current state of the United States Army and United States Marine Corps depot policy issues and infrastructure concerns. Our depots, arsenals, and ammunition production facilities are critical to this country's ability to project power and to properly train and equip our warfighters. The sustainment industrial base provides the backbone for the military to respond to a variety of contingencies, surge capacity, and provide unique solutions to requirements. Our readiness recovery is fragile, and it is important to understand exactly what is in jeopardy. During this hearing, I would like you to help us answer this basic question. In terms of risk, what does it mean to our national security, particularly our sustainment industrial base, to have failing depot infrastructure, lagging technology to properly repair and refurbish our equipment, combat vehicles waiting for depot maintenance, and a workforce that it often takes in excess of 180 days to recruit and hire? The depots saw diminished workloads when the major combat operations ended in Iraq and Afghanistan. This decreased workload, coupled with unpredictable budgets and continuing resolutions, forced the services to divest a portion of the technically skilled workforce and limit reinvestment into depot facilities. We know these variables have significant effects on the people, depot rates, and long-term organic industrial base viability. We are particularly interested in your proposed solutions related to the carryover infrastructures, strategic planning, and civilian hiring. We want to hear what the issues are from your perspective and how they're impacting on your mission. It is our responsibility as members of the subcommittee to understand the readiness challenges of our armed services and how the resources and authorities provided impact capabilities this nation needs. Before I introduce the witnesses, I turn to the distinguished ranking member, Madeline Badallo, the very appreciated gentlelady from Guam, for her opening comments that she would like to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. I think that we all agree that when the American public thinks of the terms national defense, they envision our proud service members stationed around the world and the equipment, the ships, the tanks, and aircraft that we supply so they can carry out their missions. But what is not often thought of are the capabilities needed to maintain these assets, especially the depots and shipyards of the organic industrial base that play a critical role in the readiness of our military forces. Without properly maintained ships, vehicles, aircraft, and weapons systems, our forces cannot perform necessary training required to build readiness or meet the operational requirements that are placed upon them. I am concerned that in a year where readiness has been cited as the department's top priority, the department's budget request falls well short of meeting the total depot maintenance requirement for the Army and the Marine Corps. So when questioned about why these accounts were not funded to 100% of the requirement, the department stated that the accounts were funded to the maximum executable rate. Thus far, no analysis has been shared with the committee on how the maximum executable rate was calculated or what the limiting factors are to increasing execution rates. I have long stated that just as important as it is to provide our service members with new modernized equipment, we must fully maintain the assets that we already have. So I hope that our witnesses can share their perspectives on this particular issue today. Your workforce is the backbone of your depot operations. This diverse assembly of people possess invaluable skills and expertise that must be cultivated, taking years of schooling and experience to acquire. Keeping a workforce of such caliber requires constant effort to hire, train, and retain. Past NDAA provisions have granted additional authorities allowing depots to expedite hiring. So I look forward to hearing of these provisions, if they are sufficient, or whether additional changes are necessary. Without our depots, our ability to ensure the safety of our nation and pursue our national interests are severely impacted. So, gentlemen, your depots must accomplish their missions. If we are going to rebuild readiness, we need to ensure that the depot maintenance accounts are fully funded to meet the requirement. If there are policies, authorities, workforce, infrastructure, or other challenges that are impediments to increasing the execution rates of the depots, this subcommittee needs to hear about them. So I look forward to hearing your testimony on the challenges that our depots are experiencing in personnel, operations, and infrastructure management, and how this subcommittee can help you to address them. I thank you, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Madeline Badillo. I am grateful to recognize our witnesses today. I want to thank them for their service to our nation. We have Lieutenant General Aundre Piggee, the Deputy Chief of Staff, G4, United States Army, and Brigadier General Joseph F. Shrader, the Commanding General, Marine Corps Logistics Command. I would like to welcome Lieutenant General Piggee back to the Readiness Subcommittee and thank you for your continued service to the Army and our nation. I'd also like to congratulate Brigadier General Shrader for his recent assumption of command at Albany, Georgia, of the Marine Corps Logistics Command and his first opportunity to testify before the subcommittee. Before we begin, I'd like to remind the witnesses your written statement will be submitted for the record and ask you to summarize your comments to 5 minutes or less, and we will immediately begin with General Piggee.
Good morning. And Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Badillo, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify on our organic industrial base and our ongoing initiatives in support of its revitalization. On behalf of Secretary Esper and General Milley, I would like to express our gratitude for your continued strong support. We face a security environment more complex and volatile than any we have experienced in recent history. To maintain effectiveness, we must continue to focus on readiness, modernization, and reform. A key component of readiness is the Army's OIB. This $14 billion enterprise consists of 23 ammunition plants, depots, and manufacturing arsenals that generate readiness and operational capability throughout Army formations. When the force needs equipment or parts manufactured, repaired, upgraded, the OIB delivers. Although the OIB reliably generates readiness, it has largely been reactive to emerging threats. The reactive model does not allow us to modernize efficiently. In order to improve, we are embracing opportunities for change. We are implementing new tools and processes for better forecasting workload, ensuring our work is aligned with our highest readiness priorities through our sustainment readiness model. We are collaborating with industry to share best practices and to integrate top-tier technology, and we are developing a long-term plan for infrastructure and equipment modernization. We won't achieve any of our goals without a highly skilled workforce comprised of dedicated tradesmen with critical skills, including mechanics, welders, and engineers. 50% of our workforce is over the age of 50. We are developing a succession plan to make sure we retain critical skill sets as these skilled artisans retire. On average, it takes about 10 years to train an apprentice to be a journeyman. The math makes it clear. We need the flexibility to quickly hire and retain the right talent. We have used the recently granted direct and expedited hiring authority to hire almost 500 new employees. The increased efficiency we've gained is essential in our workforce succession plan. Among the things I'll ask for today is those hiring authorities to be made permanent. We're also focusing on modernizing our facilities, many of which are overdue for an upgrade. We plan to increase our infrastructure investments, strategically allocating those resources available to modernize the most antiquated, unreliable, and inefficient machinery and buildings. Along with short-term investments, we are developing a plan to assess the scope and focus of the long-term modernization efforts. Improvements like raising the minor milcon threshold and allowing us to use operational and maintenance funding to convert our facilities will help us reach our goals faster. We appreciate any flexibility you can provide to help us upgrade in the future. The OIB has been effective in generating readiness for today's needs. We ensure that it must be adept for tomorrow's requirements. We must hire and retain a talented workforce, modernize our facilities, and incorporate emerging technologies, and above all, have the flexibility to revitalize industrial base as efficiently as possible. I thank each of you for allowing me to testify today. Your support will enable us to continue to sustain and equip our best fighting force in the world. Thank you.
And thank you very much, General Piggee, and it was encouraging to hear addressing the hiring issue. Thank you very much. General Shrader.
Good morning. Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Badillo, and distinguished members of the House Armed Services Committee on Readiness, thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important topic. The Marine Corps is advancing toward becoming a 2025 and beyond capable warfighting force. Technologically advanced vehicles, weapon, and C2 systems are being fielded. The information environment is now a warfighting domain with its own unique equipping and sustainment challenges, and our adversaries around the globe continue their efforts to close capability gaps every day. The Marine Corps must have equally advanced organic depot capabilities to meet the potential demands of this future warfighting environment. To meet these demands, we're focused on advancements in the following areas. First, digital manufacturing. We're investing in innovative and advanced manufacturing capabilities such as 3D printing and laser scanning technologies in an effort to augment the repair parts supply chain, improve response time, and drive down cost. The second area we're pursuing is conditions-based maintenance processes and practices. The goal of our conditions-based maintenance effort is to optimize our equipment inspect and repair as needed and annual depot maintenance cycle processes by improving our ability to predict depot-level repairs based on data-driven, real-time diagnostics vice using a standards time-based schedule maintenance process. The third area is equipment, long-term storage, and prepositioning. Readiness of the Marine Corps' strategic war reserves and maritime prepositioning programs rely heavily on our organic depot storage and maintenance capability. Along with the advanced manufacturing initiatives that I spoke of, we're pursuing technologies to fully automate our inventory control, storage, and supply chain processes from the strategic level down to the individual Marine at the tactical edge on the battlefield. The fourth area is partnering with industry and other service depots. In my commander's guidance, which I issued last week when I assumed command, I direct that we must mind other service depots and our private sector industrial-based partner capabilities, which are critical to our readiness and our ability to provide supplies and surge support. We rely heavily on their capability and capacity and will seek every opportunity to ensure our organic capabilities are complementary and aligned. Last but certainly not least is our workforce, specifically recruiting, hiring, and sustaining a highly capable mission-ready workforce. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Congress for the direct hiring authorities you provided us in the recent NDAA. Through these special authorities, we're able to recruit and hire on a timeline which is comparable to industry, giving us the ability to more efficiently fill our most critical positions. We very much appreciate these authorities and would like to encourage the Congress to make them permanent. In closing, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. And your reference to digital manufacturing, I thought that barcode was revolutionary. You're taking it to another step. My goodness, what a challenge, but what's being accepted and what opportunity you have. As a reminder to all the members, including me, we'll adhere to the 5-minute rule for questions on the witnesses, which is monitored ably by professional staff member Andrew Warren. And we'll begin for each of you. Aside from meeting the 6% statutory requirement for capital investments for depots, does the Army and the Marine Corps have an estimated backlog of the total facility and utility maintenance and repair backlog for all of the depots? If so, how much is it, and what is the plan to resource the requirement? And General Piggee, please.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for that question. Sir, we have aging, failed and failing facilities. We've invested more than close to $1 billion over the past 10 years to modernize our facilities as well as our equipment. We have a plan for the near term to make almost $400 million investment in the future as we go forward. However, we are in the process of a more holistic long-term view to ensure that we have the appropriate facilities, modernization of our machinery and equipment. That long-term view, we look out toward 2030. That assessment is ongoing. We expect to conclude that assessment sometime after the first of this calendar year. As you know, some of our facilities are World War II vintage, and at those locations, Halston and Radford come to mind. We have a combination of those World War II facilities, which are still in operation and being productive, and we have some of the state-of-the-art new facilities that we've recently installed and brought online. Our goal is to eliminate that old, failed or failing infrastructure as we modernize across all of our 23 depots throughout the ORB. We think we have a sufficient plan in the near term, and we are consistent. We are conducting an overall holistic assessment to see where we think we would need for as we go forward to about 2030, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And General Shrader.
Sir, good morning, and thank you for the question. So, facilities in terms of a backlog. So the Marine Corps has, not necessarily within my portfolio, the Marine Corps looks at its facilities under the Marine Corps' Installations Command, and it's a holistic look, as I understand, across the Marine Corps. From the depot perspective, I will tell you that one of the things that I believe we need to get at from just what I've seen over the last week and a half or so is our facilities in terms of storage, being able to get our equipment that is both in Albany and out in California out of the elements. I think that there is a business case. I believe there's a business case to be made for the money that we put into maintaining the equipment because of the effects of the elements. If we had the storage facilities to get them out of that, we could then take that money and maybe repurpose it into some other uses concerning maintenance. Equipment is along the same lines. The backlog, I asked that question last week in one of my turnover briefs, and the answers that I'm getting right now, sir, is there is not a backlog in terms of we're able to execute what is planned for the fiscal year. Is there equipment out there that if we were able to have more time and get it in, I believe there is some equipment out there that's in condition codes that would require us to get it into depot level maintenance. This is one of the questions that I'm going to get after in the near future here, sir, and if I could maybe take that one for the record in terms of specifics in terms of backlog. Sir, thank you.
And thank you for your commitment to do that. And for each of you, we recognize the uncertain fiscal environments are of one of your significant challenges when it comes to executing depot maintenance. Can you elaborate on the challenge and how continuing resolutions have affected the depot production for the Army and Marine Corps?
Yes, sir. I'd like to comment on that perspective. Sir, late receipt of funds impact our ability to plan and program. It impacts our second and third tier contractors. Sometimes they are sole source, small companies, mom and pop with a small workforce. And what they look for us is predictability in funding and consistently so they have the funds and appropriate personnel. These are skilled personnel that they need to maintain and retain. Workload continues to be our prime mission. We execute our workload based on sustainable readiness model. We develop our workload based on next to deploy, those units that are deploying. Those are going to the national training centers, our combat training centers throughout the Army, and those major exercises that we execute around the world. It's very challenging if we receive funds late to execute those missions and to perform tasks within the given year. And my time is almost up, but I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, but that's how we generally organize our workload on an annual basis.
And thank you, General Shrader.
Sir, I would echo everything that the Lieutenant General said. The CRs in the very beginning, that's one of the assumptions that you use in going into planning a maintenance cycle for the year. And if that key assumption is off, how many CRs can we expect? When are we expecting the budget to be able to come to us to execute? If that's off, then it has a ripple effect throughout the year. And when you have multiple CRs like this, or like we've seen in the past, it just compounds that ripple effect. And so you find yourself at the end of the year, 6 months trying to execute 12 months worth of funding and 12 months worth of plan work. So, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to Congresswoman, Ranking Member Madeline Bodayo of the beautiful territory of Guam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You always make my day. This question is for both of you. General Piggee, can you discuss the benefits permanent civilian personnel provide as part of your workforce at your depots and shipyards, and suggested strategies for continuing to incentivize and retain this part of your workforce?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you. Our permanent employees are absolutely critical to success. As I talked about in my opening statement, it takes upwards of 10 years sometime to
Yes.
properly train our artisans from a journeyman, from a apprentice to a journeyman. We're able to manage our workload and incentivize those permanent employees by assisting with hiring temp and term employees, and in some cases, contract capability. We utilize the entire workforce, both permanent, temp, and term, to manage the workload as it increases throughout the course of the year based on specific requirements that we think are not long-term, and the ability to have, in addition to our permanent employees, a temp and term employees. Those term employees also have an opportunity as our aging workforce retire. Those are where we select that skilled workforce that are already trained to replace those artisans that we have in place in a permanent capacity.
Thank you. General Shrader?
Yes, ma'am. Again, echoing what the Lieutenant General said, I think what I would say is two things. One is, you know, we believe if you take care of the people take care of the mission. And the command, under my predecessor, he issued a Workforce 21 plan that has 6 overarching goals in it to try to grow that workforce, right size, right skill sets for the future. But we look at that workforce, ma'am, as it is the backbone of our depot maintenance, and it's the DNA of the organization. So we really have to mind that. Some recommendation, ma'am, that's kind of outside of our 4 walls, but absolutely impacts us is STEM programs within our education departments. I think that we ought to really take a look at trying to foster that. In my previous job at Quantico, we worked with a local high school there to foster STEM programs and work with those students in science, technology, engineering, and math. And those are feeders, so into our intern programs and all that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, General. My second question is for the both of you, too. How does the Army and Marine Corps assess the maximum executable level of depot workload when developing the budget request? And what are the primary factors that limit the ability to increase the maximum executable, am I saying that right? Executable level? And with you, General, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Performance to execution. We determine our workload based on next to deploy units, the training that's going to be conducted, and the facilities and workforce available. To date, we have sufficient capacity and skilled artisans to perform the work that we have been asked to perform. Again, we have the flexibility with using our permanent employees as well as our temp, term, and contract capability. So currently, we do not have a backlog. However, what I will tell you, when we receive work late in the year of execution, that changes our priority. And when we have receipt of funds late, it impacts our ability to execute that work in the course of that year. I know we'll talk a little bit about carryover later, but we think to a degree carryover is good for us. It allows us to have predictable work for our workforce, also for our second and third tier contractors, where they can have predictability of managing their workforce and their supply chain.
And General?
Yes, ma'am. Sort of the same process. We take a holistic approach we look at the operating forces, what they need first to be able to do their mission, fight tonight, if you will, what they need to do that. Then we look at the war reserves, and then we look at what's in pre-positioning from a holistic standpoint, and then we build the equipment master work schedule, what's going to come through the depot maintenance program throughout the year. Things that impact it, again, it goes back to kind of I think the basic fundamental would being funding enabling what we do. So when we receive that funding and being able to execute that and stay up with that schedule that we have set in place at the beginning of the year is critical. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And thank you, Councilman Badayo. We now proceed to Congressman Austin Scott of Georgia.
Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, you both spoke to the improvements in your physical infrastructure. Could you speak briefly to improvements in information technology systems and what changes you expect there? And then also to the way artificial intelligence or machine learning is going to have the ability to help make the maintenance cycles more predictable and precise?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, you will often hear our Secretary and Chief, General Milley, often speak of taking advantage of AI, taking advantage of robotics, taking advantage of technology today. In fact, we have tasked General Perna and the Army Materiel Command to establish a center of excellence for additive manufacturing at Rock Island, Illinois, where they will develop techniques, process, and procedures that they will be responsible to proliferate throughout the Army, where we can take advantage of this additive manufacturing and other machine learning with the intention of reducing workload, becoming more efficient, and taking advantage of today's technology that will allow us to be more efficient. We're looking at 3D printing. We have 3D printing available in 16 of our depots today. When our supply chain is not able to provide necessary repair parts in a timely manner, we found that we can 3D print parts, which reduces the amount of time we wait for our supply system. We've also found that we can 3D print special tools in some cases, again, allowing us to be more effective and efficient in production of our supply chain. We're also looking at condition-based maintenance, where we put sensors on our equipment, where we can sense failures before they fail, where we can replace widgets, vice major end items at a much reduced cost. This will require our depots to take advantage of that techniques today. That's available. They are in the commercial industry, and we are taking advantage of those today in our depots.
Sir, the only thing I would add to that is inventory control. Inventory control, the vision that I would have for inventory control is if you could imagine walking into a warehouse and you have everything in that warehouse that's coded with RFID tags, and then you have a set of robotics, whether they fly or they're ground-mounted robotics that go through, and they're tied into a Wi-Fi network that's within this warehouse that can, as it moves, it can just scan. And it feeds into a C2 system that has everything loaded into it that will be on our GCSS Marine Corps system. It's loaded into it, and you know instantly what you have on the shelves, what condition it's in, what needs to be ordered, so on and so forth. So it's from inventory to having control over that inventory to being able to order what you need and then feeding into the supply chain. So it's just this constant system that I'm talking about that's an IT system that's from end to end, knowing what you have, inventorying it, knowing what you have, and then being able to order and replenish it. So it's kind of a vision, sir.
With regard to, one, I'm glad that we use as many small businesses outside of the depots as we can for the CNC machining and other things, and I hope we'll continue to do that. My question gets to, as we use those small employers that are out there, what steps are being taken to help them with cybersecurity to make sure that our technology is not stolen from? We have to share that information with those small employers for them to be able to manufacture the parts for us. What steps is the DoD taking with regard to cyber to make sure that our intellectual property is not stolen from those small employers?
So that's an issue for our entire government, and specifically our Army and our depots. In past, our logistics systems have probably been the weakest with respect to cyber and defending against cyber. We are having dialogues with what our challenges are, sharing with them our best practices and lessons learned, and I'd like to get a little bit additional information to provide you for the record.
Fine.
Exactly what our techniques are with sharing with our smaller partners.
That's fine.
So I would just tell you, my previous job, that's, what you're talking about is an ATO process, authority to operate process. So anytime we put a system, build a system, design a system, software, put it online, it has to go through that process, and there are certain security checks that go into that so that we're assured and our industry partners are insured. Any kind of information we get from them and load it into that system, it's protected. So it's kind of a good faith effort that we have in place working with industry, but there is an ATO, authority to operate process, that we go through that looks at that cybersecurity question.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, Congressman Austin Scott. We now proceed to Congressman Don McEachin of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this question is for both of you, please. I know that the Navy has developed a shipyard recapitalization plan to address some of the same kinds of challenges that the Army and Marine Corps depots face. I understand that the Army is moving in a similar direction. If depots across the services face similar challenges in terms of age, configuration of these facilities, and if they share a similar mission, then I assume there must be some value in sharing information and perhaps coordinating services. As all the services plan for the future of their respective depots, is there any effort to do department-wide planning or to look for opportunities where a joint approach or joint efforts could be valuable? And if no such effort is in the works, is there a project in which either of you sees, is this a project in which either of you sees potential value?
And thank you, sir. And this is not a competitive environment with us in the services. We work together. We have work groups where we share information. As you are probably aware of, we do work for the other services. We do M1A1 tanks for the Marines. We do MRAPs for the Marines and the Navy, and we do HH-60s at Corpus Christi for the Air Force. And in our work groups, we determine the best capability, where it might exist with the most economical value for the services. Are there opportunities for us to refine and do that better? I would say probably so. But I think we have a system in place now through our work groups and our various committees working with the other services where we do specifically talk about our workload and how we can balance that together from a joint force perspective.
Sir, I will tell you this, as I get my arms around this job, it's acronym overload, and one of the acronyms that's been thrown at me is DMISA, and what that is Depot Maintenance Inter-Service Agreement. So I ask, what does that mean? And it essentially means, like the Army has their 23 depots, Marine Corps has 2 depots, there's Air Force and Navy depots, that we, because we're the smaller, we really have to rely on them for their centers of excellence that do that equipment. As the same with us, there's equipment that we do, as the General said, for them, like MRAPs for the Air Force and so on. But there is my understanding is there is I want to say formal process through this DMISA, Depot Maintenance Inter-Service Agreement, where we look at that to make sure that it's complementary and aligned, that there's no duplicative efforts. And if they are duplicative, there's a reason why we're doing it. So yes, sir.
Thank you for that. One of my concerns about our military installations is energy resiliency. Can either of you speak to the resiliency of your depots, specifically relative to other kinds of installation? And would you mind speaking in particular to any potential role for clean energy as we work towards greater resiliency?
Sir, as you know, we have a combination of older World War II version depots and arsenals, and we have some more modern facilities, and in some cases we have World War II and modern facilities combined together. As we establish our new modernization plan, we are taking energy well into consideration, taking advantage of the latest technologies and capabilities that are out there. We have work to do. We work with our local partners in the communities that we reside to take advantage of their capabilities that exist. I will tell you that there's work to be done in that area, but we are taking into full consideration as we modernize our industrial base, taking advantage of clean energy and green energy and working with our partners to learn best practices.
Thank you.
Sir, aboard Albany, we have recently completed, it's with Georgia Power, a solar renewable plant that was I mean, there's a huge, I don't know how many acres it covers, it's very large, set of solar panels out there that we have a direct line that feeds into the depot, so that when it's charging and producing power, we tap into that. So that's one, I think, a huge win at Albany. The second thing is they're also putting in a geo cooling and thermal system there aboard Albany that's also helping us better manage the grid, if you will, down there. And then the other thing is, you know, we were recently hit with a tornado that came through, and some of the things that I've read that occurred there, one of the benefits, or I guess one of the wins out of that, was they had a backup generator process there within the base that when the tornado came through, it was very minimal time that they were out of power and unable to perform the mission in the facilities that were there. But in closing, they're really focusing on renewable energy, being able to, if something were to happen to the energy grid, the depots are still up and running. So yes, sir.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And thank you very much, Congressman Don McEachin. We now proceed to Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler of Missouri.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. General Piggee, I was interested in your comments because I'm very interested and supportive of Lake City Ammunition Plant, which is just outside of Kansas City, very close to my district and employs many people from my district. And your comments are certainly spot on, this being a World War II facility. When I first visited, I was frankly fairly shocked at all of the condition and the number of buildings there that are just needed to be raised. They have been over time, but in total, the government-owned, contracted, operated sites, of which Lake City is one of them, there's of the four largest ones of those constructed during World War II, collectively encompass a total of 33,000 acres with approximately 2,500 buildings, and yeah, many of them contain heavy industrial equipment requiring maintenance, automation, and we have been maintaining there. The time I was there last year, and I saw a big difference in the modernization and the improvements that are being made there to modernize. But you know, this has been a problem over time with not enough funding. I was pleased in FY17 that Congress provided the Army with additional funds to address this aging infrastructure, and then FY18 the Army finally requested a sufficient increase through the unfunded requirements list, which was approved by Congress. And this year I was very pleased to see that the Army requests significant investments for FY19 through the FIDEP. So it looks like, you know, we are getting after this. I was encouraged to hear about the plan that is being developed to look at this modernization that'll be released at the beginning of the year. I guess some of my questions are, since all of the ammunition plants are in bad shape, how does the Army prioritize funding for recapitalization and modernization among the various locations, since they all have needs?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for that question. And I, too, have visited Lake City, and it is a combination of World War II vintage, still making munitions the old-fashioned way, and I was quite surprised to see that to an extent, although we have made some success and improvement at that location. Man, we prioritize our, again, highest priority equipment based on output that's desired to execute readiness, to improve readiness. We are made sufficient, significant investment over the past 10 years. We've taken advantage of MILCON, the increase in authority for minor MILCON that Congress has provided us. We've taken advantage of the conversion of MILCON to O&M. We're taking advantage of all the resources that we have available. As you indicated, ma'am, we've committed an investment over the next FIDEP to improve our equipment, facilities, and machinery in our depots, and we're executing a more holistic assessment, looking out for the next decade, where we will prioritize our facilities and then come in and ask for budget execution authority to significantly improve those facilities after that assessment.
Great. How has the Army conducted a cost analysis of building new facilities versus modernizing the current ones? I know that was a question I had the last time I visited. We had a good discussion on that, but how do you analyze that analysis?
Ma'am, that's part of our holistic assessment that we're executing currently. When we find facilities that we can repurpose, that we can execute in a quicker fashion, we will use the conversion authority that Congress has given us to use O&M funds to do that. But that is part of our holistic assessment that's ongoing at this time, ma'am.
And you said something during your ceremony, your testimony, that I tried to find in the written testimony, and I couldn't find it. It caught my ear. You said something about you would like the increased authorities to be able to expend money without congressional authority. Is that what you were saying? We worked on this in the NDAA. I had an amendment for the NNSA and their infrastructure issues last year, where they wanted the ability to be able to just go ahead and contract under like $25 million and to raise that threshold from, I can't remember, but did you say something like that? Are you needing Congress to increase your authority where you can move around funds without coming to us or something?
No, ma'am. I think my intention was to thank you for the recent authority that you gave us with respect to minor MILCON and conversion authority from MILCON to O&M dollars. We think that's appropriate, well within the resources that we need. Not additional to that, but we really appreciate the authority that you recently gave us.
Just want to make sure there wasn't something new that we could be doing to be helpful. Thank you very much. I yield back.
And thank you very much, Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler. We now proceed to Congressman Salud Carbajal of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to both of you. My question this morning is on civilian workforce, and it's addressed to both of you. Last month, the Office of Personnel Management sent Congress a report to cut annuities, reduce, then eliminate the federal retiree cost of living adjustments, and eliminate the federal employee retirement system annuity supplement for federal government civilians. Are you both familiar with this proposal? And if so, how would these proposals affect your ability to recruit and retain a federal civilian workforce?
Sir, I personally am not aware of that policy and would refer you to our personnel team that could more adequately address that. Obviously, any incentives that we have, we would like to maintain. Our workforce are critical to success in our industrial facilities, and retention and retaining those employees and being able to recruit is extremely important to us, and incentives are important as well.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm not familiar with the proposed reductions or cuts, but incentives are important to us. So anytime that something like that happens, we'd have to assess the impact on our ability to recruit and retain. Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I actually inquired about this issue at the last readiness hearing, and I was given similar answers, although your answers are a little bit better. We are discussing the future of these federal civilian workforce, and I hope in the future that our witnesses here today understand this and why the results of this report can severely impact the future of the department. I will be submitting this question for the record again, and I strongly urge the witnesses to respond to the committee as soon as possible. I had a much longer list of language here to reiterate what's really in the report, but I won't belabor the issue. But I do think it's extremely critical and important, especially when the civilian workforce comprises a significant part of our readiness, that we have good answers for this and a better understanding. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And thank you, Congressman Salud Carbajal. We now proceed to Chairman Mike Rogers of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your service. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. You know, I'm a big fan of the depot system. We can't do our jobs without a strong depot system. But, you know, they've been struggling, and we've been hearing it for years, with problems with carryover and the limitations that they have. It's my view that the services are unnecessarily restricting equipment overhaul, planning and ordering to game the carryover calculation. Meanwhile, the vital work being done at these depots must be accomplished faster than ever in today's threat-filled environment to support our readiness, and the bean counting should not stand in the way of this mission. To each of the services, General Piggee and General Shrader, you may be aware that last year's House report accompanying the NDA called the Office of Secretary of Defense to assess, if necessary, modify the carryover calculation The response in April of this year provided some insight into each service but fell short of providing a solution amenable to all. Could you discuss the challenges unique to Army and Marine Corps carryover management programs and any recommendations for improvement? General, start with you.
Thank you, sir, and great to see you again, Congressman Rogers. Sir, we have worked carryover diligently and very hard. It's a priority in our Army Materiel Command. As you know, General Perna leads that effort, and he personally reviews carryover. We have reduced carryover by more than 39% in the past 3 years. We continue to refine to ensure that we are being effective and efficient with our workload. But receiving funds late in the year, continuing resolutions all have an impact on our ability to execute the requirements in the year. World events change. As priorities change for the Army, we get different priorities. We get additional work during the year of execution. It makes it virtually impossible to execute that requirement that we develop at the beginning of the year when we don't either have funds or change priorities in the course of the year. That causes carryover. We think a bit of carryover is good. We are working to stay within the allowable limit. However, we would ask that we're not penalized for those items that are beyond our span of control. Late receipt of funds, as an example, will definitely have and has had an impact on our ability to execute within that given year. World requirements that change, and we get a change in priorities and get additional work in the year of execution, prevents us from executing all of that work that was originally programmed. So we would ask us not to be penalized for work that comes in to our depots and arsenals that's beyond our span of control. We are accountable. We understand the importance of carryover, and we are willing to work with you, with OSD, and with others to develop a calculation. But the current calculation, we agree, did not meet our needs.
Well, General Perna did give me some language that we incorporated into this year's NDAA that came out of the HASC and out of the House. General Shrader, have you seen that language that we put in this year's NDAA?
Sir, not yet. I just took command last week, so and this is but
well, if you'll take a look, I'm interested.
Sir.
I know it's going to fix the Army's problem because we got it from Army Material Command, but I'm not sure if the other services are going to find it amenable to their concerns. I asked your counterparts in the Air Force in a hearing a couple weeks ago to look at it, so I'd urge you to do the same if you would, and let me know back.
I will, sir.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike Rogers. And at this time, in lieu of a second round, if anyone has individual questions, and I do, with General Shrader, you cited the January 2017 tornado, which inflicted such damage at the Marine Corps Logistics Base at Albany and the surrounding community. How is your recovery coming along? What specifically can we do to facilitate continued tornado recovery? Anything we can do to back up Congressman Austin Scott?
Sir, I appreciate the question, and I think things are going well in terms of the plan to recover from the tornado. Specifically, there were some 47,000 principal end items of equipment that were affected, and of the 47,000, we have been able to get through 75%, or roughly 35,500 pieces of that, and it's ready for issue back. So it's been through. So we've got about 25% more that either has to go through the limited technical inspection process, which may feed into the depot maintenance process. So that system is on track and going. Facilities, 64 buildings down there were damaged. Of the 64 that were damaged, 20 repairs have been complete. And there's ongoing 44 buildings and facilities that are still in various stages of completion. Last week, I was able to talk to the Navy Lieutenant Commander Seabee that's overseeing the whole project. And I think the biggest things that he is getting after is there are 8 of our storage facilities, warehouses, that they are re-roofing underway, and they're working on getting 3 of them still under contract to get after those. So it's all a process, and I think it's going well, sir. And in terms of, the last thing I'll tell you is we do have money that was put in FY18 for a 200,000 square foot facility that we're going to break ground on here pretty soon for warehousing. So it's underway, sir.
Well, this is reassuring, and we all know you can count on the Seabees too. So this is terrific. Are there any other questions? If not, I'd like just to thank all the witnesses for being here today. I also would want to wish everyone a very happy 4th of July. And if anybody's available, the Gilbert, South Carolina Peach Festival is available. Don, you come on out, come on down. But we'd invite you to come by. But happy 4th of July to everyone. This hearing is adjourned.